parenting of preschoolers. We're grateful to have you here with us tonight. Let's get started with a little bit of housekeeping first. So this is in webinar format. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, that helps limit distractions. Your screens are off, your mics are muted, so feel free to wear your pajamas and snack away because we can't see you. If you have questions, along the bottom bar, you will see a Q&A feature. Please use that. That helps us keep track of your questions and make sure they get answered as we go along. There's also a chat feature. You can use that for participation. Okay, so we'll have, we'll ask you a question and you can provide your input, or you can chat with each other in that. This webinar is being recorded. It will be posted soon on the Family Resource Center YouTube channel. Don't worry about trying to jot down all this information, because tomorrow you will get an email from me that will include all this information. Lastly, when this webinar ends, a screen will pop up asking you to fill out a survey. Please fill that out. It only takes a few moments, and it really does share your opinion, and your input matters to us. I want to make sure we're meeting your needs with this webinar. So a little bit about myself. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Leann. I am the coordinator of the Family Resource Center, and I'm also the district's liaison for special education. So I'm here to support you as you navigate through the district or get connected to community resources out in the community. So with that being said, I'm going to launch a poll, and while I'm doing that, our amazing presenter, Jessica, is going to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Cox. I'm a school psychologist with our district, and I work with our behavior consultation team, and I help provide support for all of our state preschool programs. So I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So it looks like the majority of our participants are parents, and then we have a few professionals as well. So about 70% are parents, and the rest are professionals. So Jessica, what exactly is positive parenting?
Yeah, so diving into the topic of positive parenting is just really focusing on what we can control and what we are able to do for our kiddos in a positive manner. So a lot of times when we hear like, oh, positive parenting, like I can't ever give my kid a consequence, or I can't have things in place for them if they're misbehaving. It's not being a pushover. It's just looking through our lens just a little bit different than most of us are used to. So it's very effective, and I've seen it work in the classrooms with our kids. I try as much as I can to use it with my own kids, but with that being said, we're not perfect either. So I do find it to be very effective. So what can we as adults control? We can control how we respond to our child's behavior. We can control the environments to a degree in which that we have our kids in, and we can also control just our different interactions and the plans that we're putting in place to help support our kids with their behavior.
Mm-hmm. So let's take this opportunity to provide a chance for our attendees to put in the chat what challenges you. I know for myself as a mom, back talk was my trigger. That little look in the eye of I don't have to, or that back talk, that was a trigger for me. What about you, Jessica?
My trigger is definitely when I've asked one of my boys to do something and they either just ignore my request, um, pretend like they didn't hear me when I know that they did. I always like to do the little trick of when I ask, like, hey, son, I need you to go take the trash out for me, please. And I don't get a response. And then I'll repeat myself. And then I don't get a response. And then I'll like look to my husband and be like, I really think we should probably pick up McDonald's for dinner. And they're like, McDonald's? And I'm like, I knew you heard me. That's a trigger for me.
That is brilliant. Yes. Yep. And some of the chat echoes that. Tantrums. Yes. Not listening, definitely the major theme of the evening. So we relate, everyone. Okay, so oh, this is a good point.
Yes,
Behavior in
definitely.
the eye of the beholder.
Yeah. And there's some things that may trigger me that don't trigger other people and vice versa. So keeping that in mind and knowing that when you are working with the behaviors with your own children, that it's going to be what you want to work on at home with your kid. And it may be that maybe other adults in the home have different triggers. So we're maybe working on one or two triggers with us, and that's okay.
Sure. All right. Oh, I like this. Having ideas for ways to act instead of react. Like you said, that is hard in the moment not to react. So it's good to have a plan in place.
Absolutely. We are going to go through this Positive Solutions for Families brochure. This is a resource that goes along with our teaching pyramid training that all of our preschool staff have gone through and received. And if we have brand new preschool staff, they're going through the training this year. So they're very familiar with these steps and this language, and it is tools that they're utilizing in the classroom with your children as well.
Okay.
And I think I said that, sorry. I skipped ahead. So their tip number one is just keeping our expectations realistic. So you know your child better than anybody else. You know their abilities, you know their limitations, you know where they're at developmentally, and you know what their triggers are and situations that they've been in before and how they've acted. So with that being said, just keeping in mind, like, you don't want to make a goal or an expectation for your child outside of what they're able to handle. We want them to be successful. So it's setting those goals smaller and working on the behavior before we stretch them too far. We don't want to take them on a 3-hour shopping trip initially when we know that they struggle with behavior after about 20 to 30 minutes. We want to really do the teaching during that time so that we're not setting them up for failure and ourselves as parents.
And Jessica, would this also, as you're addressing what is realistic, should a parent try and tackle, 5 different troubling behaviors at one time? Or is it better to try and chunk that up?
Yeah, I would say, like, let's look at what is the most concerning behavior, come up with a plan for that. If there's maybe 2 behaviors that go together simultaneously, then you'll look at those behaviors. But usually once we come up with a plan for the first one, some of those residual behaviors that we see that go along with that kind of go away naturally with our plan for the main behavior that is our biggest trigger, or the one that's impeding the functioning of wherever we are, whatever we're doing with our kid. So I would say definitely don't try to tackle everything at one time. Start with one thing and go from there. And I think to go along with that, I know I did say, your child's developmental stage, but don't be afraid to, I guess, make a plan for that age. So if you have a 4-year-old, but developmentally they're at an 18-month-old, that's where our plan needs to be. We don't want to expect them to be able to respond to the interventions that we're going to put in place for a 4-year-old. We want to meet them where they're at.
Sure. And that's one great thing about this is your suggestions are for if a kiddo is typically developing and on track, or if they might have some delays, right? Like you said,
Yes.
you're going to meet them where they're at. I know myself when our kids were young, we had priorities too. Like safety always came first. So if a behavior, like for instance, if, running away from me in a parking lot, something like that, like, boy, we were always going to tackle safety first.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, you might think about that as you're talking about this as a family, as to what your, what your top concerns are.
Their tip number 2, planning ahead. So we did talk about having a plan in place. We want to be able to have a plan for how are we going to front load the situation? What are we going to do during the situation? And then how do we handle it after the behavior happens? And it's always great to plan for the best, but we also want to have a plan just in case we do have behavior pop up and we need to work through that. Talking with our kids ahead of time and outside of the situation, getting their input helps us generate ideas. Having other family members be included in those conversations. We don't want to be teaching these plans during the meltdown. We want to be teaching and letting the child know the expectations ahead of time. And a lot of times it can be really beneficial to have some visual supports to go along with our plan to teach the kids ahead of time so that when we need to utilize them during the time of the behavior, they're more receptive.
Mm-hmm. So do visual supports, I know you've got some great examples here. Do the teachers use those in the classroom too?
They do. So our students are used to seeing the visual supports. We utilize them during not only academic time or playtime, but we also utilize them if a child is having a harder time or needing to calm down. So they're used to seeing the schedule be provided visually. They're used to seeing different visuals around the classroom that address emotions and where they can do emotion check-ins or at least refer over to the visual to let us know how they're feeling. We have some calming exercises that are done visually. Sometimes that's breathing, sometimes that's counting, sometimes it's exercises. So just different things like that. The ones that you're seeing here just shows a variety of, we can do mostly pictures or we can do pictures with words, just whatever is appropriate for your kiddo.
Right. And that's what I love about this too, is just like we were talking about, is these type of supports are for any kiddo, whether they're typically developing or, might have a special need or delay. You can really meet them where they're at based on, how you set up these visuals. Mm-hmm. I know for our kids, we had, the bath time routine, was a struggle. Like, so I had a little sign on the bathroom mirror of those steps because we're trying to teach our kids independence, right? So just like the, evening routine, what are you going to do, right? First, we're going to brush our teeth. And anyway, it is so helpful to, as a parent, it sort of takes off that nagging, part of the equation, because you can just give that gentle reminder, oh, remember, check your schedule, instead of it being that constant, what do you do next? And feel
Yeah.
like we're constantly nagging. Not that any of us nag, but I.
No, I agree. And they can be used for all ages. So not just our
Mhm.
preschoolers. If you have older kids in the home, they're really helpful as well. So these next two are geared towards maybe if you have older kiddos, but also you can use them with our littles where, like the example up here, the screen time checklist, just letting them know that you do have expectations for them, that they need to do certain things before earning their screen time if that's their most preferred activity, or maybe they have a certain game that they want to play with you, or um, an activity they want to do with you outdoors, but you need them to kind of get through their homework and their evening routine first. Letting them be able to check those things off to show that, oh, that's coming, but we have to do these things first.
I love that.
Tip number 3, clearly stating our expectations in advance. So, as much as I forget this, sometimes my kids cannot read my mind, and they do need those gentle reminders of what I'm expecting of them. I need to let them know exactly what I want them to do without any guessing or gray areas. So, if I want them, to pick their shoes up off the floor and go put them where they belong, I can't just say like, "Oh my gosh, you left your shoes right here in front of the door." That's really not being clear. Obviously, they know I don't want them in front of the door because I said that, but it's not really letting them know, "Hey, I need you to come get your shoes from the front door and come put them in the closet under the stairs because that's where they belong." Um, just being very clear with what we're wanting from them.
Mhm.
Tip number 4, offering limited but reasonable choices. So, right, we all appreciate having choices. I like having choices myself as an adult, and our kids appreciate this too. When we utilize giving our kiddos choices, it can help us prevent having a power struggle. So, uh, we might want to say, give them 2 choices of uh, different maybe fruits to eat with their dinner if that's something we're struggling with. Like, do you want grapes or strawberries tonight? Um, Giving them choices with activities. Do you want to do this or do you want to do that? I know the example that's on here was something that I always had to really push with my boys because, they're always like, I'm old enough. I don't need to do this. So do you want to hold my right hand or my left hand in the parking lot? And with them, I would sometimes even have to take it a step further and be like, okay, well, let's just hold pinkies, or then fine, I'm going to then hold on to the side, the bottom of your shirt. Um, or you can hold my hand. So just still giving them options, but because safety was a concern, I wanted to make sure that I still had a hold of them in some way, shape, or form.
Right. And, Jessica, that's such a good point because, you talk about preventing power struggle. It's not that you're not having that expectation that this is non-negotiable. We are doing this, but it's how it's presented that if they do have some control, that's just teaching them good life skills for later on, right? Because they are going to be making choices every day, all day long throughout their life. But it's giving them some sort of voice. I love your idea about the snack time. We know meal time can always or often be a struggle with families and kiddos and getting them. And so giving them a choice. Another area I think this is really helpful can be in getting dressed in the morning,
Mhm.
right? With our littles.
Yeah.
Oh, if you have 2 outfits for them to choose from, do you want this outfit or this outfit? Is much more manageable for a little one. Number one, because you're limiting their choices. But 2, it's giving them that power then. These are 2 options that are available to you, and you get to decide which one. So you as the parent are controlling, right, what they have access to, but then they get that freedom within that perimeter to make that choice.
Yeah, definitely. My youngest son was always pretty particular too with like homework time
Mm.
when he was younger. And it was even something as simple of it was still like a regular pencil, but they would have different designs on them. So I would pull two different looking pencils and, like, oh, which one do you want to use? And, if it was like we're in October, he's like, oh, I want to use the one with the pumpkins, but it's still a pencil, but it just gave that different choice.
Sure. And whatever we can do to, limit power struggles, like you said, that is a win for everyone.
Yeah. Okay, tip number 5. This can go along with the power struggle as well. We want to use the when then statements. A lot of us have heard these as first then, or do this, then you get that. The example they give here is when you put your shoes on, then you can go play. It's just letting them know that if you do that, what we're requesting of you that's really not preferred first, you're going to get to do the more preferred activity. It just helps motivate them through a little bit easier, and it's simple language. So we're not having this lengthy conversation. It's just first clean up, then, we get to go get your snack.
Mm-hmm.
Tip number 6 is catching our kids being good. So really, really focusing on acknowledging the positive behavior that they're doing. They do so many great things all the time. And I know for me as a parent, it's easy to get caught up in the pointing out or redirecting or correcting something that I want to see them do differently, or that, is they're doing wrong at that time. So really just taking the time to focus in on when they are doing things that I want them to do. Like, you picked up all your toys when you were done playing. Like, that's so helpful for mom. You came to me and you used your words when you were upset with your brother. That's awesome, instead of hitting or doing some other things. Just always pointing out or trying to point out the times when they are doing good things, or they're being safe, or they're making good choices, and really being descriptive about what you want to see with that. So if maybe one of my kiddos did clean up some toys and I just said, hey, thank you, but I left it pretty vague, they might necessarily not know what I'm talking about. So that's where the being specific comes into play, and letting them know you put all of your dinosaurs in the bin and put them away. That was being very, very helpful, because they are young and they're learning, and it works with older kids. It works with adults. Try it sometime. But just being specific lets them know what that expectation was that you had of them, and that they did it. And you see their little faces light up when you're acknowledging the good things that they do. All of our teachers use this in the classroom. So they're used to hearing that language. And we have seen some major changes in overall behavior just by pointing out the good things.
That is such good advice, Jessica. And, I think about it, like, as you mentioned, even in our adult relationships, right? With, in our marriages, or with our bosses. How discouraging if anyone's ever had a boss that you show up for work and they never have anything nice to say, but boy, they're gonna, let you know every time you do something wrong. How discouraging that is, and what a difference it makes when you have, you walk in the door and maybe your husband says, wow, the house looks so nice. I mean, right? That's just such an encouraging thing, instead of, the opposite. Why isn't this house ever clean?
Yes.
It's just that whole, like you said, that mindset of just trying to catch when they are doing something right, And I think that leads into tip number 7 here.
Oh yeah, when we're talking about making emotional deposits.
Mhm.
So this positive feedback and the positive acknowledgments, and just any positive interaction with our kid, like, oh, uh, look at this picture you colored. It looks so nice. I love how you did that. All of those positive things that we're telling them, we like to think of them as like they have this emotional piggy bank. And when we're saying those things, we're just making a deposit, just filling that with rich, good emotional support. Um, and every time we acknowledge something, that's filling their piggy bank. And sometimes we have to make withdrawals from that piggy bank. So that might be a redirection or a correction of behavior. But if your child already has lots of deposits of the positive, their ability to handle the redirection or the correction is much greater than if they're running on empty and their piggy bank is completely depleted and they don't have anything positive in there to be able to withdraw from. Um, it does make a really big difference.
Great advice.
Yeah. So, what behavior do we want to see? This is just something that you can do on your own with your family when you're coming up with your plan, but really look at your child's behaviors and what are some of the things that maybe push your hot buttons or what is your big safety concern, and write those behaviors down, the behavior that you do not want to see. And then we want to think of what behavior would we like to see instead, and what can we do to help teach our child what that behavior is and get them to be able to do it independently. Um, Using that positive feedback, coming up with a plan, having it ready, and teaching it to them outside of the time of the behavior really is going to help us build those skills with our kids. We have to think of behavior is it is a skill. It's not something that just comes naturally to us. And um, I always use the example of if you wanted, your kid to read, you're going to teach them. If you wanted your kid to learn how to do math, you're going to teach that. If you want your kid to know appropriate behavior, we have to teach that. We would never send a kid, you know, off to their room and say, you can't come out until you know how to read, and they're 3 years old, right? So we can't expect them to just figure out how to behave on their own. It definitely needs to be taught.
That is such a good point. And, I think you touched on a little earlier too about just as we all have different temperaments as adults and have different behaviors that trigger us or push our buttons or flip our lid, kiddos have different temperaments too. So for some children this is going to come easier, and for other kiddos this may be harder. They may be more strong-willed, or they may struggle more with self-control or self-regulation, right? So we have to keep that all in mind, because you and I both know as moms of multiple children that all our kiddos have different temperaments, and what
They do.
works for one does not work for another necessarily.
That is
That,
very, very true.
yeah.
Great point. Okay, number 7, staying calm. So you had just mentioned about let's not flip our lids, right? So that's when our kiddos push our buttons and we are feeling within ourselves that we are getting very frustrated with them. To be able to deal with the behavior and follow through with our plan that we have in place, we definitely need to be in a calm place. And so it's okay for you to have a plan for yourself too of how to stay calm. So I know for me, I just need to let my boys know, like, I need a minute. I do let them know I'm feeling frustrated. It's not a good time for me to talk or address this situation in the moment. I will be back in 2 minutes and I will walk away and remove myself if it's not a safety concern, and then come back. And I'm in a better space to address the behavior. Um, they have heard that I was frustrated, and that like it's also modeling that you're using some of those coping strategies for yourself. But we're not able to really be at our best and help support them if we're not calm.
Right. Because they can have really big emotions, even though they are really little.
Yes, yes. And they're just learning how to manage those really big emotions. So we
Sure.
just keeping that in mind too. So while we're trying to keep calm, we're also giving them strategies to keep calm. And sometimes we just do them together because we both need to regulate and calm ourselves down. And that's okay. Like you'll realize if you do the coping strategies along with your child, it just naturally brings you down because that's what they're meant to do, right? So not every calming strategy works for everybody. Like we said, all of our kids are different, but just knowing your kid and getting the feedback from them of what does work for them. You could do deep breathing. Some of our kids need physical activity to calm down, so jumping jacks or running in place. Some kiddos just need to count to 10, uh, squeeze a favorite stuffed animal or a squishy ball, something that's going to work for them. These are just some visual examples of different breathing activities, and these are going to be available in the resources if you want to print them out. But it just, as you read through them, it's just a good way to help calm everyone down in a situation. But we want to review these with our children before just introducing it when they're upset. So, uh, the one I like is because I just am hoping for this weather to turn fall one of these days is the
Mhm.
hot cocoa one. So I'm just going to show that as an example. We're just pretending like we're holding a really hot cup of hot cocoa in our hands and it's nice and warm. I'm going to bring it towards my face and I'm going to breathe in the yummy, smelly hot chocolate. And then remember that it's hot so that to cool it off before I drink it, I have to blow out. It's not a candle, Jessica, but I have to cool it down. And we go through that together, cooling down our hot cocoa. And like I said, not only is it calming me down, but it's also calming my kiddo down.
And I love that advice of, planning ahead, because in the moment, if, you as a parent are upset and they're in the middle of the meltdown, that's not the time to be teaching them, let's pretend to blow our cup of hot cocoa, right? I
Right.
know that would not have worked with my children in the moment,
No.
but if you have that and then you're reinforcing that, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing to consider is just making sure or really trying. I know all of our lives are busy. It just seems like as the years go on, it keeps getting busier and busier um, during the day and with evening activities and work schedules. But if there's just a specific time that you could set aside, even if it's not every day, but a couple times a week, to have that downtime with our kids to be able to really engage and have those meaningful conversations with them. It could be maybe you have a specific dinner time. Maybe you have a specific time of the evening where you're going to sit down and read a book with your child. Um, I know sometimes we have to multitask, and that's okay. So maybe during bath time, we are reading our story, or maybe, uh, utilizing that time to do two activities at once, but we're really being intentional and spending that time with our kids. It can also be a good time to have conversation about if we did have an episode that day and how we worked through it, and what can we do next time. And those are our teachable moments when we are calm and having that downtime.
And I don't know about you, but my kids being grown now, those are some of my most cherished memories with them, were reading the book at bedtime and we're snuggled up. And, there's something about that bonding moment that, sort of no matter what happened during the day, you just knew that that quiet time together was going to come. And even as an adult, those are my, best memories growing up, with my grandmother, snuggled in bed at night, reading, me a story. And right. And so we want to create those memories with our kiddos. That's an emotional deposit, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if you are concerned about your child's behavior, the Family Resource Center can help you. So let me talk a little bit about if you have a really young child, so birth to 3, if you have concerns about your child's development, and that can include, their social emotional development along with other areas. Sometimes what I didn't even realize as a young mom is how one of our children had a speech delay and was having, really significant behaviors from that because he was frustrated because he couldn't communicate what he wanted. So in realizing that, families can self-refer to Central Valley Regional Center. That is a resource we have in California. You don't need a doctor's note. It is all available on the website, cvrc.org. We know what the qualifications are. Again, it's a very little cost to free service of early intervention for families if they qualify. And so if you need help getting connected to that or navigating that, you're welcome to reach out to me and I can help you. If your child has already been through that and has what we call an IFSP, an Individualized Family Service Plan, then your family has been assigned a service coordinator through the regional center, and you can reach out to them and ask them. They can do an assessment and or intervention to help with challenging behavior. And that could be like an added service that they have a agency that could work with you, or even your early intervention teacher could focus on that, again, depending on their need. Ages 3 and up, you can reach out to your homeschool if you feel like it's a developmental concern. You reach out to your homeschool and consult with them, see what they suggest. But there's also some other options. So your private insurance may have behavioral services that are available. So first step, I would recommend that you check with your doctor, consult with them and see, share your concerns and ask for their input. Maybe, they will do a referral to a developmental pediatrician if they feel like that's appropriate. Many communities have early childhood mental health agencies as well and services that can help. A simpler option too would be there are agencies that do parent education or support groups. I know EPU does the Incredible Years, which is I believe it's a 12 or 16-week series on parenting and to help parents learn how to deal with challenging behavior. They also have an assessment center, and I listed what the requirements for that are. But again, you're going to want to reach out to them. All this information will be included in the handouts you'll receive. And, reach out to your child's teacher. So if they are preschool age, talk to them. And our state preschool teacher directors, like Jessica said, they're using these strategies and they have resources available, parent handouts and tips that you might find helpful. And again, you can always reach out to the Family Resource Center. And one of the things to remember too, as you're going through this and talking with each other about a plan and prioritizing is, what's important to your family. I love this quote from Michael J. Fox that family is not an important thing, it's everything. And so each family is different. you know, what your needs are. Maybe a single mom with 3 kids just trying to make ends meet. Her needs and priorities may be different, you know, than the family next door. You know, your culture, your beliefs, that's all going to play into what is important to your family and what guidelines you set up. And so that being said, these are going to be a link to some of those resources that have been referenced. The teaching pyramid is what Jessica mentioned that our teachers are learning. Here are other resources that you can access. Again, don't worry about grabbing your pencil. This is all going to come to you in that email and in a Google Drive. This is a brochure that will be in there as well. It's to help you decide, how do you find child care when your kiddo has a challenging behavior? You know, what, you know, how discouraging it is to families when their child, you know, is asked to leave childcare, right? And they have to go to another one. And what do you do? What types of providers are equipped to help support a kiddo if they have challenging behavior? And with all that, remember, every child needs that one person who is crazy about him or her. Do you not agree with that, Jessica? What a difference that makes?
Yes, it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. And it really is true. Like, just that one person can make such a huge difference in a child's life. And just know they're learning and they're trying to figure this stuff out. And if you can be that one person that's crazy about them or their champion, it just makes a big difference.
It sure does. That unconditional love, huh?
Yes.
So, all right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Jessica, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for you sharing your wisdom. Parenting is hard, okay? And any tips and resources we can get from professionals like you, we are deeply grateful. So again, you're going to receive an email from me in the next 24 hours with all the information from tonight. You're going to get a certificate of attendance, links to all the resources, and the recording of this webinar. Please remember to fill out your survey. It really is important to me to make sure that these webinars and topics are meeting your needs. So with that being said, thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.